I used to have clutter hidden in all the nooks and crannies of my home, and it was so stressful and overwhelming, just constantly feeling like I'm always cleaning, but it's never clean. As a mom with 2 small children, I know we have such limited time and energy. I couldn't just do massive declutters all the time. So instead, I started doing small declutters here and there. And I realized after reading books like Atomic Habits that it's the tiny, boring, low-effort habits that make a huge difference over time and help you reach a clutter-free home without draining yourself. Don't bulk buy, because it may or may not be worth it. Now, I'm not completely against bulk buying, and I think for certain people it can be helpful, but sometimes it can actually be such a huge waste of money and energy, and it can clutter up our homes without adding that much value to our life. Because if we bulk buy a lot of things and we already have a cluttered home, it can be so hard to stay on top of it. And when we have all of these items we've bought in bulk, if we stash them somewhere, if they're just in piles, they often get forgotten about. Things can get ruined. For example, we used to keep a lot of things in our garage when we used to have one, and things got moldy over winter. They got ruined, and it was such a waste. It was so many things we kept in there that weren't properly stored, like in nice bins or, kind of a nice organizing system, and they just got ruined, and it was a complete waste of, money and also resources, because someone else could have used those items instead. But if we're already overwhelmed and we bulk buy and we add to our plate so many things to keep track of, things can get forgotten about, things can get ruined, things can, go bad if it's anything like food related. We might not be able to find the items when we need them, and then we just go out and end up repurchasing them again. So I think what ends up happening sometimes is you end up wasting a lot more money than if we just buy what we actually need for that week or for that month. So I think if you have the space, if you have the storage, and you have solutions in place to keep things organized, then bulk buying can save you some money. But I think overall, if we do want to bulk buy, we do need to have a very good storage system in place and kind of organizing it and staying on top of it, because we need to keep track of all the items that we do bulk buy to make sure we actually use them, because otherwise we're just cluttering up our home and it's not bringing us any value. The 1-10 method. This is something that's been really helpful for me to kind of figure out what things I want to keep, what things are really important to me. And I think when we have a lot of items we need to make decisions on, for one, we can get that decision fatigue, and also we can get into this kind of spiral of overthinking of, do I really need this item? Am I gonna regret letting it go? And it can just become like such a high stakes decision that we just become paralyzed and we don't make a decision at all. We just end up throwing it back in the shed and we forget about it. And we don't end up making progress with our decluttering. And so the 1-10 scale method, basically for me, it was just kind of giving things a scale just in my mind. It doesn't have to be tracked anywhere, of, how important that item actually is and if it is a high stakes item or not. So for example, if I'm looking in my garage or shed, I will take an item and I will rate on a scale of 1 to 10, how much does this item actually help in my life? So if it's something that's super helpful, like, I don't know, my spatula is in my kitchen, then that might be a 10 out of 10 because I use that almost every day. If it's something like a cardboard box in my garage that I've forgotten about, it is a 1 out of 10, right? Or a 2 out of 10. Like, it could be useful, but it's not really bringing me any value by having it stored in my shed. And also in the 1 to 10 method, I'm gonna rate on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard would it be to replace this item? So 1 being the easiest to replace and 10 being the hardest to replace. So for cardboard boxes in my shed, if I got rid of it, how hard would it be to replace it or to find something else like it that I can use? Well, I can just ask one of my neighbors if they have one I can borrow. I can go to a big supermarket and I can ask for one. There are so many places you can find empty cardboard boxes to use. And so I would give it maybe a 2 out of 10 to replace because it's so easy to replace. So for me, that decision instantly becomes so much easier. It doesn't have to be this high stakes thing. It's not such a high pressure thing that I need to keep this box because it can be useful one day. And I think this method can really help you just take some of that pressure off yourself and realizing that not all of these decluttering decisions are such, big important decisions. Both lanes method. In our town's shopping mall, I go in their car park. When you go in, there's this barrier and it has 2 lanes. One of the lanes is the one that everybody uses, and the other one is one that nobody seems to use, or very rarely do I see people go through that. And the reason why they don't use that lane is because it's much more narrow, and it's also next to a pillar that kind of makes it very hard to squeeze through with your car. And I see they keep putting signs, use both lanes, but I think sometimes we need to ask ourselves, is there a reason why someone's not using that lane? Like, it's not just about putting that sign, like, do this. Sometimes it's helpful to find out why someone's not using that lane, because there might be a specific reason why that is. And now, thinking about decluttering in our homes, similarly, if I set up a system in my home and I realize that, people aren't using it, I'll have to think, is there a reason why that's happening? Why are they not using both lanes? Is there something wrong with the lane that I picked, the kind of organizing system I picked? Because sometimes maybe they do want to put their coats away, but the clothes rack is too high up and they need a hook that's on their level. Or maybe I tried to overly organize, like, when you micro organize a certain drawer into too many little categories and then it's just overwhelming to keep on top of. Or maybe I store some of the items in a spot that's way out of reach, and so people aren't putting things back because of that. So I really have to ask myself, this system that I come up with, is it actually convenient and functional? And if people aren't, following it in our home, it might not be that they don't want to, it might just be that it's not actually functional enough. And I can try to think if I can change that and make it easier, because that's just gonna help all of us. The blinking cursor rule. It can be so hard to start decluttering from a blank point. As in, when you're starting a new project and you open up a document, you've got that blinking cursor and a blank page. It can be so hard to get started and to know what step to next first. Oh my gosh, what? It can even be a bit intimidating. And it's kind of the same with decluttering. Sometimes when you're just staring at the project, it can feel so hard to start, like to know where to start, what to tackle first. But the truth is, the only way to actually start making progress is to get going, to start without overthinking it too much. Start from the floor, start with what's obvious, start with what you can first see or reach, and just get going and just make a little bit of progress at a time. And that's going to help so much more than staring at the project and trying to figure out what's the most optimal and best way to start. Truthfully, it's just about getting started. And once you start to see a bit of progress, maybe a bit of floor being cleared up, then it can be really motivating to keep going as well. If you do need some more pointers on where to get started, I have a free decluttering checklist for you that's linked in the description box. I think you might find that helpful. There have been over 50,000 people who have downloaded that checklist, and I think you might find it helpful too. No rewards. Okay, I'm not saying you can't reward yourself at all for decluttering, but in the past, I used to declutter my wardrobe and then go out and do shopping to reward myself for said decluttering, which is such a negative cycle to be in. It's wasteful for us, it's wasteful for the planet, and it also massively clutters up our home. And sometimes we bring in more things than we decluttered and we feel like, we're making so much progress, but why aren't we seeing results? And that might be why. If your influx of stuff is kind of equal or even bigger than the outflux of stuff, so things you bring into your home and things you take out by decluttering, if it's not kind of an equal amount, things will start piling up. So I'm not saying don't reward yourself for decluttering, but maybe not necessarily with shopping for more things like the ones you decluttered. Less knickknacks. It makes your home so much easier to keep clean, to keep tidy. And for myself, I noticed that actually visual clutter really affects me too. And when you're a family with small children, you know how easily your flat surfaces and your floors can get covered in stuff. So if on top of that, all of my surfaces or like shelves and everything is already cluttered with knickknacks and things, I know I feel my stress levels go way high. If you do have a few knickknacks that are sentimental, that mean a lot to you, maybe you got them on a special trip or something, then obviously keep those out and display them if it makes you happy to look at them. But I think when we have a lot of random items that we sometimes buy in the shop, we buy on impulse or we buy because they're on sale just to kind of decorate our home, but we don't end up really loving them, but we still keep them on the shelves, that's when I think it just gets really cluttered and visually stimulating, but not in a good way. And so getting rid of those can make such a big difference. Minimal stuff out on your surfaces. Kind of tying into my previous point, but having minimal stuff out on your flat surfaces like your dining table, your side tables, your coffee table. I know it's nice to decorate it a bit, but I think when we have too many things out on those surfaces, they can become less functional and more cluttered. So for me, when I notice our dining table is full of stuff, that usually means those items need to be relocated. Maybe they need to go back to my kids' rooms. Maybe they need to go back to the kitchen. Maybe I need to find a little tray or a spot for all the artwork to go. But keeping less stuff out on surfaces can make it so much easier to, set the dining table when we eat, or for the kids to have a place to do their homework or for me to do my work. And it also makes cleaning it up so much quicker. If you have a flat surface that's fairly tidy, then giving it a wipe is going to be way quicker. So cleaning the flat surfaces can be one of the best places for you to start, because you're going to instantly see results. You're going to instantly see that negative space that forms that can actually bring so much peace and calm. Charity shop runs. I'm someone who likes to collect the clutter along the way. So we have this little outbox under our stairs, and whenever I notice, the kids have outgrown clothing, I'll put it in there, or toys that I know they no longer play with, I'll put them in the outbox. Just things that I know I can take to the charity shop or that I can sell maybe on Vinted, for example. I will put them in there, and next time when I go to town to do errands or to a doctor's appointment or whatever it might be, I can simply take what's in there in a bag and take it to the charity shop. Because I know for most of us, taking the stuff out of our home can actually be one of the hardest steps. Like, yes, we pile it all up in one pile to declutter, but taking that pile out of our homes can feel like such a big step. So just creating a little box or a little place where you can put those items, and next time you go to town, just think, oh, I'm gonna add a charity shop run to my list. Like, I'm gonna take this with me and get it out of my house, and that can be a massive help to keep your home clutter-free. The paper sort out is something I try to do regularly, because papers pile up so quickly. There's letters, there's artwork kids bring, there's, stuff I maybe print out that I need. And then in time, there are so many things that you don't need to keep anymore. Maybe it's letters from a GP appointment that you already attended. Obviously, you don't need that letter anymore. Maybe it's junk mail. Maybe it's birthday invites that, again, have already passed. So all of those items can go straight into recycling. We have this letter holder in our entryway, and that's where we keep all of this incoming mail and paperwork. But I do make it a point to sort through. For one, junk mail goes straight into recycling. I don't put it in there, so I have a filter for that. But anything that I need to address, like, birthday invites to reply to, or maybe letters I need to do something about, then I will keep them there for as long as they're relevant. But once they are no longer relevant, again, once a week, I'll go through them and make sure I get rid of anything we don't need anymore. And the North Rule is one of my favorites, and this is something we've kind of adopted in the family, and we tend to do this regularly, at least my husband and I. So whenever you go north, bring something that belongs north with you. So if I'm going in the kitchen, I'm gonna look, can I take my water bottle back in the kitchen? Can I take some plates and mugs or empty wrappers? If I'm upstairs, coming downstairs, I'll have a think, are there mugs in the bedroom I can bring downstairs? When we leave all of these things just where they are, and we think, oh, at the weekend, I'm just gonna sort all of it. But when the weekend comes, then it's this massive task that feels so overwhelming, that takes up so much of our time. But I realize if I just do these little tasks throughout the week, it's just so much easier. Things don't really pile up, and then I don't have this massive task to do at the weekend. And so this has been so helpful for me. Just a little reminder that you can get the free decluttering checklist down below if you need some help to get started with your decluttering. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you in the next one.